Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Bai Quan received a call from Cheng Xinghai not long after. Uncle Bai, Chen Ming has agreed to participate. Bai Quan, who was arranging for people to strengthen surveillance near Chen Ming's dome, immediately thought to himself, it's finally here. He recalled the research report on the purgatory core that Chen Ming provided him, calmed down the emotions of the recent bad things, and responded to Cheng Xinghai, I understand. When will it be? Chen Ming said it was tonight. How are the others preparing? They are all fine. They all seem to be looking forward to fighting Chen Ming. Chen Ming had never interacted with other people in the 14th Army Corps. The reason why these people wanted to fight with Chen Ming was immediately realized by Bai Quan, saying, don't make anyone have any thoughts that they shouldn't have. Dad Bai, no, Uncle Bai, don't worry, I keep the proper distance from everyone. And the teammates I selected for Chen Ming are all guys who only think about fighting and killing. They will not be disturbed by things off the court. Oh, there is also Cheng Xinghai. No, he seems to only have fighting and killing in his mind. Anyway, don't worry about the selection. I have been carefully selecting people these days. The strength of the two teams is definitely about the same. There will be no problem. Bai Quan didn't have any reaction at all because Cheng Xinghai called him by daddy. Cheng Xinghai's character usually talks all the time when there is nothing important to do, not just once or twice. Moreover, he was just wondering where Cheng Xinghai had been in the past 2 days, and he never came to see him. In the past few days, when I was teaching, I accidentally mentioned Cheng Xinghai to Chen Ming, but Chen Ming didn't know about it and said he had no contact. It seems that he went back to school in the past 2 days to find those who have permission to use analog equipment. These candidates are basically her peers, the top students in school, and they were finally gathered together today. Then Bai Quan will not go to the secondary review staff. Cheng Xinghai can still make people feel at ease when it comes to serious matters. I understand. You can just send me a copy of the personnel list when the time comes. I will personally review the video this time and send it to their school. Whether they will get rewards from the school or be scolded by the instructor depends on their performance. Cheng Xinghai made an unexpected sound. I don't understand why I regard this private battle organized by you as a regular competition. Cheng Xinghai reacted immediately and asked, because of Chen Ming? Bai Quan did not answer directly but said, I won't tell you, you will know it soon anyway. I will still make the rules for tonight's battle. I will confirm with Chen Ming some rules that only he can know. Cheng Xinghai didn't have any problem with Bai Quan not answering her question and instead asked, is it related to his psychic ability again? Yes, simulation equipment cannot directly simulate some psychic effects. It can only be accomplished with this special setting. I need both of you to fully unleash the upper limit of your overall strength. Cheng Xinghai suddenly thought of the last simulated battle and asked, you said before that Chen Ming's spiritual power was partially restricted by you? I will also limit him this time. At least I won't let him do anything beyond his own psychic limit. In fact, Bai Quan still had half a sentence left to say, but the restrictions were somewhat difficult to explain. He was convinced that Chen Ming's spiritual power definitely had some effects that he was completely unaware of. And what he wants to impose on Chen Ming is this restriction. To put it simply, it is no different than having no restrictions. After all, Chen Ming's unexpressed spiritual power could never be used here. And judging from Chen Ming's current psychic abilities, he could definitely overwhelm Cheng Xinghai's side on a large-scale battlefield with dedicated support. Cheng Xinghai was quite happy with Bai Quan's answer. After seeing the disgusting extent of Chen Ming's psychic abilities, she no longer had the confidence to defeat Chen Ming in a one-on-one situation with equal forces on the frontal battlefield. Just an unlimited jump engine can make Chen Ming invincible in a pure battle, which is disgusting to the point of being outrageous. Only if there is a headquarters base on a large-scale battlefield that can limit the use of Chen Ming's spiritual power can Cheng Xinghai see the possibility of victory. In addition, Chen Ming's spiritual power was restricted by Bai Quan. Cheng Xinghai felt that the next large-scale simulated battle would be the closest she came to defeating Chen Ming. Seeing that Cheng Xinghai was in a good mood and was not aware of his sinister intentions at all, Bai Quan said directly, go and get people ready. Don't let others go. Don't worry, no one will miss a simulation of this scale. By the way, do you want to tell them that the video will be reviewed and sent to their school? Bai Quan immediately said, tell them, put some pressure on them, and don't let your teammates think that this simulation is a very casual thing. Chang Xinghai suddenly noticed Bai Quan's thoughts, raised the corners of his mouth a little, and said in a longer voice, okay, dash. That night, Chen Ming directly arranged for all researchers at the institute to have a holiday the next day. After all, the Extraordinary Research Institute is currently a research institute that Chen Ming wants to help the 14th Legion complete the heritage of another civilization acquired by the Machine Tribe. It occasionally conducts part-time research on the Machine Tribe. Most of the researchers who came here also knew about this situation. Those who didn't knew it already understood it when Chen Ming gave them part of the research report on the Purgatory Core and asked them to help improve it. Well, it is always normal for such an institute to have a holiday after completing a research assignment. Although Chen Ming was mainly responsible for the project, others only participated in some purely auxiliary work in the final stage. Moreover, it has only been a few days since these researchers officially started work, but there are definitely all the rules that should be in place. Moreover, after Chen Ming completed the research on the core of Purgatory and handed the complete report to Bai Quan, other researchers at the Transcendent Research Institute also received the complete Purgatory Core research report sent to them by Chen Ming, and they all knew that the Purgatory Core project was completed. Now that the work is familiar and the project has been completed, there will always be time to rest. For researchers, if they are interested during the holidays, they will naturally read Chen Ming's complete paper. After all, many people are interested in Chen Ming, the psyker who knows the most about the mechanical race. Assuming that there are people who are not interested, they would not have any objection to Chen Ming's paid leave. Anyway, there are no restrictions on the movement of other researchers in the entire Chaofan Research Institute except Chen Ming. It does not mean that the 14th Legion Station does not have free time, and some domes used for leisure and entertainment of the personnel here, especially for non-military researchers. It only takes a few minutes to contact someone on the terminal to pick you up. However, it seems that everyone at the Institute is very interested in Chen Ming's complete research report, and no one wants to leave. This made Chen Ming very worry-free and able to participate in Chang Xinghai's battle safely. After dinner time, Bai Quan appeared near Chen Ming's dome on a destroyer that was suspected to be used for the next reconnaissance mission, picked up Chen Ming, and went to where the simulation equipment was. Chen Ming knew that the simulation equipment was installed in a separate dome before, and even knew the general situation here. Although it was his first time here, he felt very familiar when walking in the building where the simulation equipment was located. Soon he came to the simulation equipment that occupied an area almost equal to the size of his laboratory on the other side of the dome. When he arrived in front of the equipment, Bai Quan suddenly stopped, brought up a menu on the operation screen of the simulation equipment, and said to Chen Ming, "Because what is going to be a new simulation battle next, I still have the rules. I need to confirm with you again." While Bai Quan was operating on the menu, he continued to say to Chen Ming, "The basic rules are still the same as last time, but I have lifted most of the restrictions for you. You can set them according to the extent of your psychic ability. But I still have a few things to confirm with you, because this simulation may involve capital ships. So I have to ask you in advance, can you tell me? Can you control the battleship?" Bai Chuan's inquiry is naturally reasonable. After all, if you want to set the rules of the simulation equipment in line with Chen Ming's psychic abilities, his information will definitely be exposed to a certain extent. But for Chen Ming, as long as the Zerg are not exposed, other psychic powers can be used at will. His ability to control spaceships and various industrial facilities has been exposed for a long time. There was no way to hide these things as he wanted to build a colony of his own. The ability to control the machine race must have been speculated the moment the situation of being able to control Afterglow was revealed. So if you are exposed, you are exposed. The exposed information might be able to provide the think tank with more information about his psychic abilities, so that some things that Chen Ming couldn't explain clearly would be difficult for the think tank to understand. From the fact that the think tank has directly found the most correct way to use the machine race, it can be seen that their role will definitely not be small. If this information is leaked, the positive impact will most likely be more than the negative impact. So after thinking about it, Chen Ming gave an affirmative answer, yes. But then Chen Ming said, but I have never actually controlled a battleship until now. Before I actually control a battleship, I can only give you an estimated answer. It's okay to estimate, just look at it and tell. Chen Ming thought again. The current maximum number of ships he can control is 8 cruisers, which is one more than before. It was indeed close to being able to control the capital ship, so Chen Ming thought about his words and said, I control anything, including spaceships and industrial equipment, except that it consumes a lot of mental energy at the moment of control. Besides, maintaining my psychic control over the device is simple. The amount of mental power required by a battleship is far greater than that of a cruiser. It may be a little difficult with my current total mental power, but I should be able to do it if I try hard, but it may cause me to fall into coma if I can't control it. Bai Quan also thought about it and said, let's do it this way. You can control the battleship, but after controlling the battleship, you will be unable to move for a day in the simulation. How about that? No problem. Okay, second question. Will your control over these things be disconnected when your mental power is completely exhausted? No, I'm sure of that. I've already tried it. Bai Quan nodded with some surprise. After writing this down, he asked, is there an upper limit to the scale of your psychic control? Oh, there shouldn't be. Before Chen Ming could answer, Bai Quan suddenly thought of what they had previously investigated about what Chen Ming had done. At least 2 galaxies' afterglow colonies were evacuated and taken away by Chen Ming. His psychic power didn't seem to have an upper limit. Chen Ming said smoothly, actually, it existed before, but now? Well, that's one thing. The next one is the limit of your spiritual power and repair. I remember you said before that you can repair the spacecraft even if there is only 1 iron atom left. I believe this. But how many times has your mental power been repaired, or the amount of damage repaired? Chen Ming was a little confused by this question because he was not sure yet. After thinking about it for a while, he said, let's put it this way. When I cooperated with you to do things on Yu Hui's side, I first stole Yu Hui's things and ran away, and then cooperated with you on the rest. In that situation, I used psychic energy to repair the cruiser nonstop for 2 days in order to quickly transfer the afterglow, so that the cruiser could use jumps multiple times. I can't remember the specific number of times, but the total amount of mental power consumed by my psychic power when repairing things is not that much. As long as my mental power is not exhausted and I still have the materials, everything under my control can be repaired without limit. Bai Quan was thinking subconsciously after hearing Chen Ming's words. Although Chen Ming made it clear that he did not consume much mental energy when performing repairs, but since Chen Ming also said that he would be unconscious if he controlled the battleship, then repairing the cruiser for 2 days in a row. Can you handle this? Chen Ming answered somewhat ambiguously. I have some good things used by psychics that can help me in the use of psychic powers. Bai Quan nodded. He did not continue to ask further questions, but instead said, speaking of this kind of thing, I asked the doctor for a list of medicines that you psychics can use during the day. I will send it to you later, and you can look back at it. Okay. Well, that's okay then. It's hard to define mental power, so I won't give you any restrictions. It's up to you. Bai Quan still believes in Chen Ming's character. That's okay. When my mental power is used to a certain extent, I will take the initiative to stop and wait for recovery. I will try my best to act according to my true situation. That's best. Bai Quan clicked on the terminal a few more times, turned to Chen Ming and said, I think these are the important things. If you think about anything else that is missing, I can fill it in for you now. Chen Ming thought for a moment and said, in the previous battle between me and Chang Xinghai, as long as the opposing ship touched the wreckage of my ship, it would be contaminated with materials controlled by me. I can directly use this method to destroy the spacecraft contaminated by the materials I control. How can I say this? Bai Quan immediately thought of the last time Chang Xinghai's fleet was attacked unilaterally by Chen Ming and was forced to fight head-on. Well, this kind of large-scale combat can help you unlock this restriction. Your field of vision will also be preserved. Remember to control your mental power. Who knows that this ability, which is like cheating, is Chen Ming's most basic ability. It is really not good to limit it on this scale, and Bai Chuan's own idea is to let Chen Ming fully exert the effect of his psychic powers, so as to determine Chen Ming's true value in the war. After continuing to discuss with Chen Ming, he revised some detailed rules. Bai Quan finished setting the rules for the next battle, and when starting the device, he took the opportunity to ask Chen Ming, "Have you seen the background of this simulated battle? Is there any background?" "Well, it seems that Cheng Xinghai didn't tell you. I'll tell you now. The prototype area for this simulation is 1/3 of the Gallo star field. The setting is that both the local government and the military are corrupt and collude with each other to exploit the colonies under their control. But some soldiers at the bottom chose to resist, and a rebellion broke out when they gathered together. With the support of all parties, a climate quickly formed. The rebels will be weak at the beginning, but the government forces will not be too strong, because the setting is that many people do not support the government, but secretly support the rebels, so the rebels will have some hidden benefits." "That's about it." Chen Ming immediately complained. "What kind of strange background is this?" Bai Quan spread his hands and said, "After all, the Gallo, 2-star area in the Gallo star territory has a criminal record, and a war may break out in the Gallo star territory in the future, so, in short, the government forces need to destroy the rebels within a limited time limit, otherwise the rebels will attract the attention of higher-ups and take down the corrupt higher-ups. The rebels need to persevere under the encirclement and suppression of government forces and wait for the order from above." Chen Ming suddenly made a stop gesture and said, Wait for Zhaoan? Isn't it over when the government troops are captured by the higher-ups? Have you noticed this?" "Yes. After the battle between the rebels and the government forces is over, there will be a high-level inspection and suppression campaign. If it passes, forget about it. If it fails, it will only be counted as a victory for the government forces." Chen Ming said subconsciously, "Why do I feel like something similar has happened before?" "It really does exist, but it happened many years ago, and it's not in the Gallo star territory. The rebels at that time actually passed the encirclement and suppression tests later and were successfully restored to peace. However, the external propaganda of this matter was not like this. After all, the empire wanted to save face. And there was a pity that the leader of the rebels disappeared during that battle." Bai Quan looked at Chen Ming. His expression suddenly changed slightly, as if he thought of something. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. There is something else I want to tell you. Although this simulation and your last simulation are both simulated battles, they are completely different after entering. You can feel it after entering. And although you will not be able to go to areas outside the set area due to various reasons, in the simulation at least the entire star field is still operating, not just 1/3 of the star field where you can move. The surrounding existence will still have an impact on the simulation, so you need to pay attention to this. The specific impact it may have is more complicated, so I won't tell you here. Others will probably explain it to you later, so don't worry." After ending this topic, Chen Ming and Bai Quan chatted for a while on some details of the rules. After everything was set, Chen Ming was led by Bai Quan to a small independent room in the building where the simulation equipment was located. This room has a semi-open cabin on the ground connected to a large number of lines, similar to a cryosleep cabin. Those lines are used to monitor the physical condition of the person lying in the cabin to ensure that there are no physical problems during the use of the equipment. If a problem is detected, an alarm will be issued as soon as possible. Wait a moment. When Chen Ming reached this step, he suddenly thought that although his prosthetic brain was the same as the Zerg brain, it was purely a carrier of consciousness, allowing consciousness to exist in the body. But this kind of deep dive should require the brain to play some role. He is really not sure whether his prosthesis can go in. But Chen Ming had another thought. Since I have already had 2 experiences of submerging my consciousness, and my body can normally enter an ordinary simulation even though I am far away, I should be able to do it this time, too, probably. If it really doesn't work, he has a backup method, so it's not a big problem. Chen Ming lay down in the cabin, put on his helmet, and activated the function of deep consciousness penetration. Fortunately, the device did not alarm and say that no living person was detected. Chen Ming could feel that his thinking was gradually being accelerated by the influence of the device. It seems that there is no need for him to use a little bit of manipulation to destroy the equipment and delay time for him to build a new one and use it near the main body. Chen Ming relaxed and completely devoted his consciousness to the simulation equipment. When the various indicators detected by Chen Ming's prosthesis gradually leveled off, only the brain activity of the prosthesis increased to a new level. Bai Quan exited the room, closed the door of the compartment, and the door automatically locked, isolating everyone. Unless the person inside takes the initiative to open it, or there is a problem with the physical detection of the person inside, or there are two or more administrators who open it with a key, there is no way to break in directly. People who have penetrated into deep consciousness are very fragile, and the acceleration of brain thinking is also very carefully adjusted when deep consciousness penetrates. Any external interference may cause problems with accelerated thinking. The impact of brain problems is very terrifying, so the 14th Legion has always done its best to protect people who use analog equipment. Bai Quan tried pressing the electronic door lock next to him a few times. After confirming that it could not be opened, he went to the room next to Chen Ming, where there was also a similar device. As the referee of this battle, he also had to dive in deeply and keep an eye on the entire battle. Before putting on his helmet, Bai Quan took the terminal and made a call. After being connected, he said directly, "I have given you permission to watch the battle. Please pay attention and estimate the level of Chen Ming's mental power." The voice of a white spring psychic friend came from the other end of the phone. Is this simulation really reliable? Of course it's not reliable, so it's just an estimate. Chen Ming came from the Psychic Association. You know their rules. Chen Ming is not willing to accept any tests now, so he can only use this method first. The psyker friend said with a somewhat unhappy tone. If you ask me, just give him a test quietly while his deep consciousness is submerged. Many people are looking forward to Chen Ming being tested one day, so just do this. There are so many things going on. Bai Quan decisively rejected this idea. No, I don't want to turn a good friend into an enemy. Whatever, I just mentioned it casually. Bai Quan did not dwell on this point too much and said, "Let me ask you something for you psychics. Is there anything good that can assist in the recovery of mental power or directly improve the mental power? A good thing with these two functions? Let me think about it." Ectoplasm stones with the character of spirit, special psychic creatures, ship spirits, and spiritual weapons will also work. Oh, by the way, I heard that there is something called condensed psychic energy source. This seems to work too. Well, there are also various devices found in the psyker ruins of that civilization and the unique psionic weapons they left behind. That's about it. What's wrong? Are you asking this all of a sudden? It's okay. I was just asking. I don't believe it. I guess you suspect that Chen Ming has something similar, but you still ask. Bai Quan said and put on his helmet. Okay, stop talking nonsense. We have to go in quickly. Don't make people wait for a long time. I know. When Bai Quan just lay down on the equipment, Chen Ming has completed deep consciousness dive, and his body can still move normally. This is good news. At least Chen Ming will not be unable to move on both sides due to the partial consciousness on the prosthetic body. But this put him in a very strange state. The consciousness of the prosthetic body has indeed been accelerated, but at the same time, this part of consciousness has also undergone some changes along with the main consciousness of Chen Ming's body, which makes Chen Ming's thinking speed also accelerate. The prosthetic's thinking acceleration rate allows things that take a month to be solved in just a dozen hours. The acceleration efficiency of the thinking speed acquired by the main body is about 10%. In other words, Chen Ming's main body's thinking speed was accelerated by nearly 5 times in just a few dozen seconds. One day can be used for 5 days. Of course, Chen Ming's current thinking speed itself has been accelerated several times with the assistance of the 2 hive mind networks of the mechanical race and the Zerg race. Therefore, the combined effect of the two has made Chen Ming's thinking speed reach an exaggerated level. Wait, Chen Ming suddenly understood why the main body's acceleration efficiency was only 10%. It's because of these 2 hive minds. There was only partial consciousness of Chen Ming on the prosthesis over there. It is equivalent to an independent subconsciousness controlled by Chen Ming and affected by Chen Ming's main body's thinking speed. In addition to stating its main consciousness, The ontology here also has the consciousness of the insect swarm and the machine race mounted on it, which provides the ontology with an increase in thinking. Therefore, it is also accelerated by the feedback of the prosthesis, so the overall acceleration efficiency is of course low. Let's look at the current situation from the beginning. It is probably the mechanical race and the Zerg race that provide the main body with the blessing of thinking speed. The main body also provides the blessing of the same thinking speed as the main body to the part of consciousness on the prosthesis. Then the thinking of the prosthetic body was accelerated and fed back to the main body. Due to the existence of two hive minds, the main body cannot continue to accelerate, so it only reaches about 5 times the original speed. The bonuses and feedback from the prosthetic body did not overlap with each other, and things like stepping on the left foot and the right foot to reach the sky did not happen, which ultimately led to the current situation. It seems that after waiting, Chen Ming will have to ask the insect queen if she feels her mind speeding up. Let's see if the Zerg and machine races are purely a drag in this regard, or if they take away part of the blessing that Chen Ming should have had. If part of it is taken away, it seems to be of great benefit to the subsequent development of the insect queen. Moreover, this situation did not have a great impact on Chen Ming himself. After all, the prosthetic's thinking acceleration is real, and the prosthesis can still do many things at a terrifying thinking speed. Chen Ming quickly understood the situation after the prosthesis entered deep consciousness. At the same time, after getting used to the accelerated thinking for a while, he quickly got used to it. However, this simulation device still left a very deep impression on Chen Ming. After all, the rate of thought acceleration was a bit exaggerated. He hadn't noticed the existence of such a thing in analog equipment before. It seems that we need to look back at this technology that may involve the brain and nerves. Chen Ming actually had something similar on hand. I got it from Yuhui, the neural overclocking device. It has the ability to stimulate brain nerves, increase nerve activity, and accelerate thinking within a certain period of time after use. When I first encountered this device, Yuhui's file showed that it was a relic of another civilization. But I didn't expect that the Empire had already made this kind of thing in the simulation device based on this technology. However, it is hard to say which of the two is more suitable for Chen Ming to use. After all, Chen Ming only needs to spend 10 minutes a day using the neural overclocker, and then Chen Ming's nerves will be activated for the whole day, which can ensure that Chen Ming will maintain this effect when he is awake. And this thought acceleration device seems to have some limitations. The first and most obvious thing is that you must lie on this device. And since there is such a device, Chen Ming doesn't see any place in the Empire where it is widely used. Either it is a cost issue, or this kind of equipment cannot be used for a long time. If Chen Ming wants to get one, it's okay if the problem is the former problem, but if it is the latter problem, then it's better to use this thing less. He must figure this out. Of course, he doesn't have the time to do these things now. When Chen Ming completely completed the deep consciousness infiltration, he found that he was in a dark, virtual space. There were some figures standing next to him. Including him, there were 10 people in total, standing face-to-face in a 50-50 split, and Chang Xinghai stood opposite him. When she saw Chen Ming, she showed a sly smile on her face, stretched out her hand to Chen Ming and said, "Finally here, let's start." Chen Ming looked at Chang Xinghai's hand, and then looked at the side. The other 8 people standing face-to-face were shaking hands with each other to show friendship. Chen Ming also shook hands. However, his attention was not on Chang Xinghai at all, but on the other 8 people present. 7 of them were people he didn't know, and the only one he knew was Chang Xinghai, who happened to be standing in his row. Chang Xinghai immediately noticed Chen Ming's gaze, and immediately turned his head away with some embarrassment. But Chen Ming didn't do anything. He wouldn't remember the past that had ended for too long, and Chang Xinghai's current behavior was really unnecessary in his opinion. But he couldn't care about what happened to the others, so Chen Ming didn't say anything and continued to observe the others. These people looked very young. The oldest was only in his early 20s, and they were a few years younger than Chen Ming. However, their expressions did not look like those of young people who had just started out, but more like the backbone of a force. I don't know why, except for him and the 2 siblings Chang Xinghai and Chang Xinghai, the remaining 7 people all looked very serious. They looked like they were not going to a simulated battlefield, but a real battlefield. But it was not easy for Chen Ming to ask at this time, because after the two sides met and shook hands, the friendly pre-war exchange session ended. The figures of Cheng Xinghai and the other four people standing in front of Chen Ming gradually disappeared. Only the four people who belonged to the same camp as Chen Ming were still by his side. And from this moment on, Chen Ming found that there were two more times in the upper right corner of his vision. One was the standard Earth time in the outside world, and the time passed slowly, which was caused by the acceleration of thinking. The other was a countdown time in the simulation that was the same as the normal time in perception, with a total length of exactly half an hour after a month. 1 month was the deadline for the next simulated war, and half an hour should be the last preparation time now. At the same time, a special terminal appeared in Chen Ming's hand. It seemed that participants in the same team could directly contact each other. After confirming their own situation, the 5 people present looked at each other. Except for Chen Ming, the 4 people seemed to know each other. So except for Cheng Xinghai, the eyes of the other 3 people quickly locked on Chen Ming. One of them suddenly took a small step towards Chen Ming and said to Chen Ming, "Hello Chen Ming, I am Song Pu, a senior student majoring in military command at the military university directly under the 14th Corps." "Hello." Chen Ming nodded in response and asked, "Do you need me to do anything?" Song Pu did not answer the question directly, but asked, "I heard from Cheng Xinghai that this is your first time to participate in such a large-scale simulated battle. Is that right?" "Yes." Chen Ming did not deny it. "Then let me give you a brief introduction first. We are now conducting a large-scale simulated battle with the star field as the background. Because the capabilities required in large-scale wars involve a wide range, it must be carried out by multiple people. We need to work together to achieve the goals set in the background to win." Although Chen Ming had learned about the general situation from Bai Quan before, Song Pu would definitely not give him face if he said it again. So he simply pretended to know nothing and said, "I understand, but I heard that the background of this mission is a civil war, divided into 2 camps, government forces and rebels. So are we government forces or rebels?" Before Song Pu could answer, someone next to him said, "We need to confirm this after we actually go in." Song Pu nodded to the young man who was wearing square glasses and looked a little fat, and turned back to Chen Ming and said, "That's it." Chen Ming glanced at the fat man and asked, "You seem to have cooperated before?" "Yes, we have participated in similar simulated battles together before. How about this? Let's get to know each other first so that it's easier to call each other. After we fully enter the simulation, we can follow our previous habits and call each other by code names. How about that?" Chen Ming certainly wouldn't refuse this and said, "I have no objection." Song Pu patted his chest and said, "I, Song Pu, codename Commander, am good at overall dispatch and command of large-scale battlefields." Then he pointed to the little fat man with glasses who had just spoken and said, "This is Dong Miao, who is in the same school and grade as me, but majors in logistics. Good at dispatching logistics materials and integrating logistics routes to ensure the supply of materials for the frontline troops." Song Pu's eyes immediately turned to the man who had not spoken and was very strong and said, "This Hong Guanghong's code name is Engineer, majoring in military theory at the Military Industrial University, good at planning and dispatching military engineering, that is, responsible for the planning of the military industry and the layout of various military facilities." Finally, he pointed to Cheng Xinghai and said, "This is Cheng Xinghai, codename General, good at battlefield command. You seem to know each other before?" Cheng Xinghai nodded slightly, still looking a little evasive to Chen Ming. But Ming Quan had already responded before, gave the compensation he deserved, and apologized solemnly. But Cheng Xinghai seemed to be unable to let go of this matter, and he didn't know what the situation was. At this time, Bai Quan, who had just laid in the equipment and had not had time to completely sink into the deep consciousness, suddenly felt a little itchy in his nose, but this feeling soon disappeared. Bai Quan didn't care and continued to sink his consciousness into the equipment. Chen Ming naturally couldn't imagine how much Cheng Xinghai had suffered after returning. He just thought about the most appropriate way for him to do things in this situation, and chose to come to Cheng Xinghai and extend his hand to him. Cheng Xinghai hesitated for a moment, and finally extended his hand and shook it vigorously. "Sorry." Then our previous conflicts will end here? Yes, thank you. Cheng Xinghe nodded to Chen Ming and put away his previous look. Bai Quan's punishment on him actually ended when he completed the tasks assigned to him by Bai Quan. He has been like this mainly because he has been worried about Chen Ming's attitude in his heart. He is Bai Quan's junior, and Chen Ming has grown from being able to tie with him to being able to sit on equal footing with Bai Quan in just a few months. Let Cheng Xinghe have an indescribable gap and worry. However, after actually meeting Chen Ming, and Chen Ming showed a normal attitude, Cheng Xinghe also found that his worries were unnecessary, and it was not a big deal to continue. So since Chen Ming gave him a suitable step, he went down with the flow. Moreover, the words that Cheng Xinghe had told Bai Quan during the day were still ringing in his ears. If Bai Quan reported him to the school because of his poor performance on the battlefield, it would be embarrassing even if he was a senior and had come out to participate in the war for internship. So now he had to put all the past things aside and devote himself to the next simulated war. If he could let go completely, rather than just temporarily, it would be a good thing for him. Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghe shook hands and made peace. To the other three, it was an unexpected but not bad thing. They all could tell that there was something going on between Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghe, and it was definitely good news to reconcile before a cooperative activity was about to take place. Cheng Xinghe organized this event not only to beat up his brother, but also to have Cheng Xinghe and Chen Ming meet head-on and find ways to ease their relationship. After all, the relationship between Chen Ming and Bai Quan is there, and the relationship between Cheng Xinghe and Bai Quan is also there. Even if it fails, there won't be a big problem. Seeing that the relationship between the two had almost eased, Songpu said, Chen Ming, I have introduced you to the other people's code names and abilities. So what are your abilities? Have you decided on your code name? How about Psychers? Chen Ming looked at Songpu and said, I have no objection to the codename Psychic, but my abilities are more complicated and it's difficult to explain clearly. Roughly speaking, it is the ability to have absolute control over mechanical equipment, to repair and transform spacecraft, industrial equipment, and any objects with mechanical structures, and to manufacture them with materials. I will demonstrate it to you in detail in the simulation. I have just talked with the referee about this special psychic setting, and all the necessary settings have been set. Songpu asked again, can you show it in a little more detail? You can actually use psychic powers now? Here. Chen Ming glanced at the dark void around him, and then at himself. The simulation completely reproduced his clothes, except for the wrist guards made of Zerg carapace. Without special settings in the simulation, this thing is just a wristband made of biomass material, nothing more. Chen Ming usually wears a coat that covers a lot of his body. Inside the coat, he has stuffed a complete set of repair kits in every corner. Carrying a weight of about 10 kilograms can be regarded as a way to exercise. Chen Ming dropped a bunch of tools on the ground with a clank in the eyes of several people. Then all these tools turned into liquid in Chen Ming's hands and flowed in his palms. This situation is different from previous small-scale simulations. In the small-scale simulation, Chen Ming's psychic powers were directly completed, ignoring the process when using them. And now Chen Ming can even see the process of these tools liquefying, which looks extremely real. Chen Ming didn't pay much attention to it. Anyway, psychic powers were fine in the simulation, as long as they could be used. The metal liquid transformed by these tools wrapped around Chen Ming's arm, gradually forming a fully functional auxiliary robotic arm. Chen Ming stretched out the hand with the robotic arm forward so that others could see it clearly. After clenching his fist hard, Chen Ming took off the robotic arm and handed it to Hong Guanghong of the Military Industrial University. He should know something about this kind of thing. Hong Guanghong was not polite. After taking over the robotic arm, he also took out a few tools from somewhere on his body and adjusted several joints of the robotic arm. He made the mechanical arm that originally fit Chen Ming a little looser and then put it on his arm. Hong Guanghong carefully observed the robotic arm on his arm and said, the RS-34 robotic arm for auxiliary manual work is brand new, flawless, and very powerful. So. Chen Ming was humble at first, and then said, my spiritual power is limited by the materials, otherwise I can make more things. Songpu immediately asked, what kind of material can your spiritual power be unrestricted? Does it have to be a material that you have touched? That's not necessary. I just need to touch the main body of the warehouse so that I can use all the materials stored in this warehouse. As soon as Chen Ming finished explaining, Hong Guanghong's arm suddenly made an obvious sound of mechanical activity. All the tools on the auxiliary working robot arm popped up under his control at the same time, making his arm look a bit bloated, like a weird mechanical hand. However, Hong Guanghong said with admiration, "A very easy-to-use robotic arm." As soon as he finished speaking, he put away all the pop-up tools one by one, removed the mechanical arm, and planned to restore it to its original state and return it to Chen Ming. But Chen Ming waved his hand. The robotic arm immediately turned into a metallic liquid in Hong Guanghong's hand and floated back to Chen Ming's side, recondensing into tools. After a brief demonstration, while Chen Ming continued to stuff the tools into the coat he was wearing, he asked his first question. "So what are we going to do in the simulation?" Song Pu looked at Chen Ming with a sparkle in his eyes. After hearing Chen Ming's question, he answered immediately, "What you do in reality, you do in simulation." Seeing that Chen Ming was a little confused, Song Pu continued to explain, "Maybe what I said is a bit vague, but you will know when you get in. The situation should be a little more complicated than you think." It was the first time I participated in a large-scale simulation, and I was shocked. Chen Ming's curiosity was aroused by Song Pu's words. After looking at the countdown in the upper right corner of his field of vision, he said, "I understand. So now I just need to wait, right?" "Yes. Take a little rest and recuperate your energy. There will probably not be any rest time in the next month. We can't sleep in this simulation." "Good." Chen Ming chose to respect the opinions of experienced people and closed his eyes to rest. The other 4 people present also chose their own way of resting, but they all looked at Chen Ming's situation from time to time and observed Chen Ming. Especially Song Pu. He looked at Chen Ming as if he saw the key to winning this battle. In fact, he had already investigated Chen Ming's situation and understood Chen Ming before Chen Xinghai invited him to participate in this battle. So he had no objection to being assigned to Chen Ming's side by Chen Xinghai to participate in this battle. He even hoped to fight side by side with Chen Ming and see this legendary psychic who completed the attack on Yu Hui with Bai, the current popular figure of the 14th Corps, and won a great victory. And he also found out that Chen Ming had joined the 14th Corps and was learning battlefield command techniques with Bai Quan in the branch. In the future, they may work together on the front battlefield. So he was the first to stand up and communicate with Chen Ming today, showing an obvious friendly attitude. And he also took the time to contact several teammates that Chen Xinghai asked him to find in advance to explain the matter and introduce Chen Ming's situation. Therefore, although the other 2 did not know much about Chen Ming, they were all top students in their schools and had rich combat experience. There was no impatience or arrogance towards Chen Ming, a novice who had no experience in large-scale battlefields and might be a drag. At the beginning, they were just trusting Song Pu and being polite to Chen Ming. However, when Chen Ming showed his psychic power and showed enough value, what was left was pure respect for a qualified teammate. Time passed quickly. The half-hour countdown came to an end. At the moment when the countdown ended, I don't know who said it started. The dark and illusory environment around Chen Ming instantly solidified. Chen Ming blinked and found that he appeared in a cafe that looked pretty good. The people in the same team were not beside him, they were separated. Chen Ming subconsciously turned his head and looked out the window. The airborne vehicles flying fast from high altitude and the vehicles moving along the road on the ground all told Chen Ming that this was a peaceful colony. The drivers and passengers with different expressions in those vehicles, the pedestrians hurrying on the roadside, and the guests drinking tea leisurely in the cafe, and a few students playing around when Chen Ming turned back, all made Chen Ming feel as if he was in a real world. However, the special terminal in his hand told him that all this was virtual, a simulation according to the set program. It's just that all NPCs seem to have extremely high intelligence. Chen Ming now seriously doubts whether the Empire has used the captured Yu Hui in such a place. At this moment, the special terminal in Chen Ming's hand suddenly rang. Commander Song Pu spoke in the terminal. Each of you confirm your identity and location. We need to figure out the overall situation. My identity has been confirmed. I am the supreme leader of the rebels. I am currently in the core of the area occupied by the rebels, a frontline town on the border of the Gallo 4-star zone, a military colony called Luyin Galaxy. We are the rebels. Song Pu sat behind his desk, picked up a task report on handling spies, took a look, put the report in the place closest to him, and continued to speak on the terminal. Your identity and location in the simulation need to be confirmed as soon as possible. I need to know your situation as soon as possible. The terminal quickly followed the received, sent by General Cheng Xinghe, logistics, Dong Miao, and engineer Hong Guanghong. Chen Ming also followed suit, then put down the terminal and confirmed his status. When the surrounding environment changed just now and appeared in the cafe, Chen Ming found that he had changed his clothes and changed into a more casual set of clothes instead of the coat that Chen Ming bought himself to carry various tools. There was nothing on him except a terminal and some scattered coins. It seems that his identity can only be confirmed through this terminal. Chen Ming picked up the terminal he brought with him and found that the terminal needed a password to unlock. Although it was easy for psychics to solve a password, he thought about it and directly entered the two words, Chen Ming. As a result, he really entered. The personal information interface of the terminal showed everything about Chen Ming's identity. However, except for the name Chen Ming, this identity did not have any content similar to Chen Ming's own experience. It seemed that he was just an ordinary office worker who was on vacation today in the simulation. But Chen Ming knew that he was here to participate in the simulation, not to go on vacation. So there must be something wrong with this identity. Just as Chen Ming was looking for any identity clues in the terminal, he noticed that several paragraphs had flashed in that special terminal. Others seemed to have confirmed their identities one after another. General Cheng Xinghe, I am in an office at a station on the front line. My position is the commander of the rebel garrison. There are documents on the table for the next inspection of the ground orbital defense facilities. It seems that we are in a temporary truce with the government army now. Logistics, Dong Miao, I am with the commander. Engineer, Hong Guanghong, I was inspecting the equipment in an industrial colony that was captured by the government forces not long before my visit. My identity seems to be the chief ordnance expert from somewhere else. This colony is very large. According to people around me, there are 2 industrial colonies of similar size in the galaxy. They both seem to have just been seized from government forces. I'm not sure whether it will be our main industrial output colony in the future. As soon as Chen Ming read what his teammates said, Song Pu asked, "Where are the psychics?" Chen Ming looked around and said in the terminal, "I'm in a cafe." Logistics Dong Miao asked a question, obviously not understanding Chen Ming's current situation. Fortunately, Chen Ming had already found the folder hidden in the terminal he carried with him and was looking through the information in it. According to the information, I am currently in the Gallo 2-star sector, a comprehensive colony in the Ocon star system. It seems that there is some task for me to perform. Song Pu immediately said, Gallo 2 is the star sector actually controlled by the government forces. There are 12 star sectors in the Gallo star territory. The first 4 star sectors have been opened in this simulation. Both Gallo 1 and Gallo 2 are completely under the control of the government forces. Gallo 4 is under our control, and Gallo 3, which is surrounded by the center of the other 3 sectors, is where we and the government forces just the location of the ceasefire. If I remember correctly the galaxy you are in, it should be at the junction of Gallo 2 and Gallo 4. Song Pu quickly told a bunch of information that was useful to Chen Ming. Let Chen Ming already have some guesses about his work. Well, there seems to be a ciphertext in my personal terminal. Let me translate it and take a look. Chen Ming had learned how to decipher ciphertext when he was learning command techniques from Bai Quan. After finding the correct reference book in the terminal, Chen Ming quickly translated the contents of the ciphertext. It seems that I need to meet with the informant in the simulation at my current cafe. The meeting is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon Earth time. It is now 2:45 o'clock in the afternoon. Do I need to meet someone? Song Pu thought for a moment and glanced across the document he just saw. His expression changed instantly, and he quickly said in the terminal, "No, we can't meet. Retreat quickly." Good. Chen Ming chose to trust his teammates' judgment and immediately stood up and left the cafe. At the same time, he asked, "Should I find a way to escape?" "That's right." Since we have determined that you are working as a spy in a place actually controlled by the government forces, it most likely means that someone from the government forces is also working as a spy here. There happened to be a spy's clue on my desk. This clue points to the government forces. It must be a clue to one of the government forces. If our spy here is you, then the other party's spy should be Chen Ming. Since I have this clue here, then the government forces must also have a clue that can investigate you. You must evacuate as soon as possible. Chen Ming walked out of the cafe, summoned a taxi, and asked the driver to go to the nearest civil aerospace airport. After the taxi started, Chen Ming replied on the terminal, "Is it so exciting to come up?" Song Pu quickly responded, "Although we have a truce with the government forces now, the superficial truce is just preparing for the second war under the water and the coming one. The war you are underwater now is on the cusp of the storm. This is the first confrontation at the beginning. If either side fails, they will directly lose a psyker, which will greatly affect the entire situation. Go to a safe location as soon as possible, and I will arrange your rescue." "I understand. What about Chen Ming? You can't miss this opportunity, right?" Song Pu's eyes glanced at the other terminal he placed on the table, which contained complete information about Chen Ming's identity in the simulation. "I will arrange for someone to catch her, but your side is more important." "Okay, so what kind of place is considered a safe place?" "Just wherever you think it's safe, then tell me the location." "The galaxy you are in is close to the border and far away from the original war zone. As long as you can escape pursuit and hide for a while, we can rescue you." Some metallic liquid suddenly flowed out from Chen Ming's fingertips. "A place where I feel safe? I get it," Chen Ming replied, and then condensed the metal liquid into a bracelet and put it on his wrist. This was the only bit of material he could use on the small ordering bell at the coffee shop he just dropped by, and it was also the only bit of metal material he controlled now. No, there is also the taxi he is sitting in now. That's all he has now. It seems to be because Chen Ming's background was as a spy abroad, and he had no contact with the rebel headquarters, front lines, or material warehouses at relay stations. As a result, Chen Ming simply does not have enough materials to do things now. This can be regarded as a means to restrict Chen Ming. When Chen Ming discussed this rule with Bai Quan before, he still thought it was quite normal. It was normal that untouched materials or warehouses could not be used, and this restriction was nothing. But after coming in and encountering the current situation of him being a spy outside, he realized that this was definitely Bai Quan's target. Bai Quan must know the specific background of the entire simulation and is just waiting for him to fall into the trap. But it's okay. Chen Ming was able to turn over from a shabby iron or to today having 12 cruisers, tens of thousands of destroyers and frigates. So now that I am penniless, starting a business in the simulation is just walking the same path over again. Of course, this is a cooperative simulated battle, so after Chen Ming's teammates learned about the situation, they did not intend to let Chen Ming handle the matter alone. They are a team, and cooperation is the most important thing. The next plan was quickly discussed in the Special Terminal's communication channel. First of all, the most important first step is to rescue Chen Ming. All other things can be postponed. Chen Ming is the most critical person now. If they lose Chen Ming, they will lose the biggest advantage they have. Of course, what needs to be done still needs to be done. While Song Pu was arranging manpower to prepare for the rescue of Chen Ming, he was also investigating Chen Ming's location based on the spy document that was sent to him at the beginning. The other team members are also seizing the time to finish the things they need to do immediately after entering the simulation. At the same time, the terminal shares some information that can only be obtained through actual investigation. In the scope of a star field, the sharing and exchange of information is very important. They are all important figures in the rebels now. Only by understanding the situation of the rebels can they formulate more complete plans in the future. On Chen Ming's way to the civil aerospace airport, Song Pu had already integrated the messages posted by his teammates on the special terminal communication channel, uniformly posted in the communication channel. The total number of valuable systems currently under actual control by the rebels is 331. It occupies 1/3 of the number of galaxies in the entire simulated battlefield, and the number of galaxies actually controlled by the government is 758. Ship composition, The number of capital ships is 0. The number of cruisers is 202. Most of them are defenders mass-produced by Sindar Company or some other mass-produced models. Some are rulers taken away by the rebels when they rebelled. The number of destroyers that can be mobilized is about 5,000, not counting the patrol fleet of the system itself. The number of frigates is 5 times the number of destroyers, approaching 30,000. All spaceships can be divided into 3 main fleets, each consisting of 50 cruisers, 200 destroyers, and thousands of frigates. One of the fleets is at the headquarters and is under my command. The other 2 fleets are under the generals at the front. The remaining cruisers and scattered spacecraft are mainly stationed at the junction between us and the government forces, and generally do not participate in large-scale battles. This number is a bit low, mainly because there were large-scale battles with government forces before the armistice, so the fleet quantity problem needs to be solved by us. The number of soldiers fluctuates greatly, but as long as the source of soldiers is ensured, our number of soldiers will not be a problem. Colony. The number of colonies exceeding the second degree is 568. Among them, there are 233 comprehensive colonies, 11 industrial colonies, and 74 professional mining colonies. These 3 are more important, and the remaining types are more complicated. I have put them in the attachment for those who are interested to read. As for the number of colonies that are smaller than level 2, we cannot currently count them, so they are not included. Government troops. The movements of the government forces are relatively clear. They failed in the last encirclement and suppression of us, and chose to take the initiative to cease fire with us when their losses were much greater than ours. They need time to regroup, and we also need time to recuperate. But the overall situation is still mainly in favor of the government. They occupy more systems and have more colonies. Although there are many colonial commentators who do not support the government forces and support us, the government forces can still squeeze money out of their hands. I predict that the government will restart the war in a few days. We must rescue Chen Ming as soon as possible and discuss the next plan. Chen Ming could already see the civil aerospace airport with spacecraft landing in the distance in the taxi. And at this time, he also happened to see Song Pu mention him on the terminal. So he said directly in the channel, "I am approaching the airport. I saw in the file on the terminal that there is a safe house in the surrounding colonies. I should be able to stay there." Song Pu reminded, "Be careful, the location of the safe house may also be discovered. If you find anything abnormal, just run away. I have arranged a special operations team to infiltrate there. You need to find a way to hide for a day or 2. Got it." Chen Ming quickly replied and continued to ask on the terminal, "How is the progress of the capture of Shanghai?" "Just locked her location and are implementing the capture plan. She is near the junction of our territory and the government-occupied area. It is not far from you. You can meet her after crossing a few channels." "Have you found her?" "Yes." Song Pu responded instantly after answering. The abilities of both sides in this simulated battle are similar. Since they have already locked onto Shanghai, then the opponent. Chen Ming was only 1 step away from the airport at this time, but since some time ago, the sparse traffic around him had completely disappeared. Although the taxi was still moving forward, its speed was slowly decreasing. And when Chen Ming tried to open the door, he couldn't open it at all, and there was only a prompt saying that the permission was locked. Chen Ming immediately took full control of the taxi remotely controlled by the taxi company. But he still let the taxi slow down slowly according to the original command sent by the taxi company. Looking at the appearance of the police hovercraft gradually appearing in the sky in the distance, Chen Ming felt that he had to walk the last road by himself. But he didn't rush to get off the taxi, but squatted in the position where the door could cover the back seat of the taxi. At the same time, he used the materials inside the taxi to rub a micro-robot by hand and put it at the bottom of the taxi, observing the situation outside. In just a few tens of seconds when Chen Ming's taxi stopped, many reinforcements from the local police have appeared in the empty surroundings. The direction of the airport has been completely blocked, and a layer of isolation belt has been set up. A large number of humanoid police robots completely surrounded Chen Ming in a few minutes. Although these mechanical bodies may become Chen Ming's helpers, how to approach is a big problem. Chen Ming no longer expects the taxi to continue to take him forward, and quickly transforms all the materials inside the taxi except the outer shell into metal liquid around him, so that they can be transformed into what Chen Ming wants them to be at any time. At this moment, Chen Ming suddenly saw a hovercraft suddenly approaching his direction and shouted to him, "Disarm and surrender immediately, otherwise we will use lethal force." Chen Ming did not intend to pay attention to him and was still thinking about how to safely reach the airport behind the police line. But at the moment when the second warning sounded, a hovercraft suspended far away suddenly appeared with the tail flame of something being fired. The robot that Chen Ming left under the taxi instantly locked onto the appearance of the object being launched and sent back a photo. It was a micromissile. Fuck. Chen Ming thought the police would warn him twice more. After all, it seemed that they didn't want to kill him directly, but to capture him alive. And Chen Ming originally wanted to wait for the police robot to approach and arrest him, and then take the opportunity to attack. But the other side obviously didn't give him this opportunity. I'm afraid someone behind him would have reminded him to do it directly. Chen Ming cursed inwardly, and his psychic power was instantly activated. The taxi, which originally had a shell, liquefied along with the metal liquid wrapped around Chen Ming and rose into the sky on one side. The huge liquid metal vortex composed of metal liquid was suspended in the air to block the launch trajectory of the micromissile. Almost at the moment when Chen Ming just set up the vortex, the micromissile arrived in front of him. Countless metal liquids flew out under the impact of the explosion, but were instantly controlled by Chen Ming's psychic power to return. Most of it was wrapped around Chen Ming, who had lost the protection of the taxi, and completely wrapped him up, forming a power armor that looked a bit bloated. Chen Ming didn't have many choices. He could only use materials to pile up and reduce the mobility to a certain extent to make the power armor more protective. It would not be directly penetrated at a glance and hurt Chen Ming himself. The remaining materials formed a flying robot, which flew straight to the sky. It could help Chen Ming get a bird's-eye view of the entire area near the airport and cooperate with the small robot on the ground to let Chen Ming quickly plan the most suitable route. Unfortunately, due to the limitation of materials, this is the most he can do with his psychic power now. But it was enough. While the explosion smoke had not completely dissipated, Chen Ming controlled the power armor that was a little heavier than before and rushed out of the smoke. The police robots that were originally blocking Chen Ming and the airport immediately took action and raised the electric shotguns on their arms. The sharp electrode needles pierced directly into the limbs of Chen Ming's power armor. The instantly raised voltage directly damaged the circuit inside the armor and emitted black smoke. After all, this was just a cheap power armor made of taxi materials. Not to mention the fully upgraded biomass armor. Even the prototype locust armor of biological armor could not compare. Fortunately, the electrode needles fired by the police robot's electric shotgun did not cause physical damage. The damage to the circuit alone was nothing to Chen Ming. After the psychic energy instantly repaired the damage and tore off the wires connecting the electrode needles, Chen Ming continued to rush towards the police robots blocking the airport defense line like nothing had happened. As long as he could contact a robot, Chen Ming could get the capital to escape. At this time, the floating car that had launched a micromissile suddenly moved again. The shells on both sides of its body suddenly opened, and several micromissile launchers popped out from it. In Chen Ming's eyes, dozens of micromissiles with tail flames piercing the sky shot at Chen Ming. The power armor wrapped around Chen Ming's body was liquefied again in an instant, and the swirling metal liquid once again formed a metal vortex in the air. The flight trajectory of the micromissiles rolled up and threw them all away. Continuous explosions occurred around Chen Ming, but none of them could really hurt Chen Ming. The smoke and dust produced by the explosion even provided cover for Chen Ming again. And when Chen Ming, wearing power armor, broke through the smoke and dust again, he was only one step away from the police robot. However, the police robots no longer used non-lethal force here, and directly took out the standard electromagnetic rifles they were equipped with. The rain of bullets composed of electromagnetic bullets instantly covered every part of Chen Ming's body. But Chen Ming, except for reaching out to the two fatal parts of his head and chest, still pushed forward with the firepower output as if nothing had happened. All the metal projectiles that hit the power armor were reversed by Chen Ming and turned into a part of the power armor on his body, increasing the strength of the armor. When Chen Ming grabbed the head of a police robot, the robot melted instantly. The metal liquid flowed along his arm and wrapped around the power armor on Chen Ming's body. As it flowed, the materials and structure of the entire power armor were constantly optimized by Chen Ming. The excess metal liquid was suspended directly around Chen Ming like a shield, protecting him and not giving any chance of being hit by external attacks. Chen Ming also took control of the two police robots closest to him. These two robots did not melt, but turned against him directly after being controlled, raised their guns at friendly forces, and instantly destroyed the control centers of several police robots. Electromagnetic weapons were not effective when attacking Chen Ming, but they were accurate when attacking friendly forces. Taking advantage of the chaos caused by the police robot's betrayal, Chen Ming took the opportunity to run around the police's defense line. While controlling the robots to create more chaos, he was also using the bodies of the fallen military robots to continuously optimize this set of power armor. Soon he achieved the best model that could be made with the materials he could currently obtain. All the extra materials were made into micro-flying robots by Chen Ming. Some of them continued to monitor the situation around the airport overhead, while the other part was the hovercraft that was targeting Chen Ming and was approaching quickly, as if it was planning to do something. After blocking more police units that wanted to get close to Chen Ming rushed into the airport alone wearing a much lighter but significantly stronger power armor. And when he entered the airport where a large number of spaceships were parked, and there was no time to evacuate them all, he was like entering the steel jungle in his consciousness space and returned to his home court. Psychic power was no longer restricted, and several spaceships were kneaded in his hands like clay. Even if the civilian spaceship itself had many castrations, its structure was at least intact. As long as Chen Ming did not think about pursuing armor strength, other functions could be achieved by relying on his own understanding of spaceship design. If it really didn't work, Chen Ming also had the overclocking technology he had learned from Zhuijing, which he hadn't used for a while. Let civilian ships also be able to exert the strength of military ships. But Chen Ming didn't do that now. He just kept contacting the spaceships that were docked here and kept aggregating the melted metal liquid. During this process, Chen Ming actually found several military spaceships that looked like civilian spaceships at this civilian airport. In the computers inside these spaceships, Chen Ming instantly found the routes of these spaceships. The purpose was all in the galaxy, actually controlled by the rebels. It seemed that these spaceships were to be used as spy spaceships. Chen Ming recorded the models of these spaceships and asked the robots flying in the sky to take a few high-definition close-ups of these spaceships. Later, he might be able to find similar spaceships in the rebel-controlled area. Then Chen Ming took control of all these military spaceships without hesitation and left one unmelted, but left it in place. Chen Ming didn't need this spaceship now, and it might have other uses in the future. The remaining spaceships all merged into the liquid metal ball that was nearly 100 meters in diameter in the air. At this time, Chen Ming happened to discover through the robot in the air that there were new reinforcements about 2 or 3 kilometers away from the airport. In addition to the police, Chen Ming even saw some shuttle boats and spaceships that were obviously government troops. It looked like he couldn't stay at the airport any longer. Chen Ming raised his head. The giant metal liquid ball in the sky suddenly fell to the ground. Countless metallic liquids finally seemed to be discovered by Newton and began to flow normally according to the laws of physics. And in the center, where the metallic liquid was still wrapped just now, the figure of a destroyer appeared there. This is an unmodeled destroyer that Chen Ming made using the spacecraft at the airport, but the design was based on part of the heavy rain and part of the stardust. So its effect is also very obvious. However, Chen Ming also noticed at this time that there were many civilians trapped in the airport outside the defense lines set up by the police, with expressions of fear on their faces, as well as those police officers who stood in front of the civilians, with firm faces but unable to completely conceal the fear in their eyes. When it comes to dealing with psychers, there is no difference between humans and humans. Although Chen Ming knew that this was a simulation, after thinking about it, he had no plans to deal a harsh blow to the police here before leaving. He simply turned around and walked straight onto the spacecraft. Before the local government had time to surround him, the spacecraft took off and flew into the sky. No one on the ground dared to block such a destroyer. Chen Ming successfully escaped the planet's gravity and entered the universe. Next, he only needs to go to the edge of the galaxy, and he can directly use hyperspace to return to the area occupied by the rebels. What Chen Ming found strange was that after he took off, the local government did not send a follow-up spacecraft to pursue him. Entering hyperspace. If the reason why the spacecraft was not sent directly from the ground was because the government thought it was just arresting or killing a person, then the reason why the spacecraft was not sent to track it in space. Chen Ming picked up the special terminal. Sure enough, Song Pu mentioned this above. This was an arrangement made by the rebel informant after sacrificing himself, which delayed the tracking time of the government forces. Originally, Chen Ming was worried about how to get there safely from the edge of the galaxy after leaving the planet with limited logistical supplies. Now it seems that this issue does not need to be considered by him. That's the benefit of having teammates. Chen Ming's spaceship quickly arrived at the edge of the galaxy and successfully entered hyperspace after starting the hyperspace channel engine. It was only then that the Galaxy Patrol reluctantly tracked it down, eating the spacecraft's exhaust and following it into hyperspace. It was this 10-second lag that made it too late for the government's pursuers to track Chen Ming the moment they entered hyperspace. Chen Ming is already in an absolutely safe position. Even if there is a cruiser in the patrol, there is nothing to be afraid of. Moreover, the hyperspace channel jump engine developed by Chen Ming himself has been modified by him into the spacecraft he is riding on. In the confused eyes of everyone observing this scene, Chen Ming's spaceship disappeared into hyperspace like a cruiser leaping. Someone immediately said in Chang Xinghai's terminal channel, "How can a destroyer of his be able to jump?" Before anyone else could reply, Chang Xinghai suddenly said in the terminal, "Don't ask. Asking means psychic energy." As soon as Chang Xinghai spoke, someone immediately said to her, "Reply at this time, are you safe?" "Well, the spaceship I'm on has just set sail, and the rebels have no chance to kill me." So smooth? Yes. Just a few minutes before Chen Ming was blocked outside the airport. Chang Xinghai happened to arrive at her airport a little earlier than Chen Ming. After some makeup, she no longer looked like the lively girl she had been before, but instead looked like an ordinary person close to 30 years old. She easily relied on the multiple identities given by her spy status to buy the ticket without anyone noticing. Chang Xinghai's psychic energy can directly improve her intelligence and thinking ability, rather than simply increasing her thinking speed. Therefore, she discovered the problem with her identity as soon as she learned that she was in the territory of the rebels and was about to meet with people. While immediately notifying her teammates to come to the rescue, she also immediately chose to retreat. So she finally arrived at the airport just a little earlier than Chen Ming. Before the rebel siege came, he successfully boarded a civilian spaceship that belonged to a purely neutral force that was independent of the government forces and rebels, and was about to go to the government-controlled area. A war is a war, and a civil war is a civil war. Before issues such as treason arise completely, the exchange of civilian spacecraft between government and rebel areas is not completely prohibited. It is impossible for the rebels to ask a neutral force's normally operating spacecraft to suddenly stop. After all, for this force, if they really follow the rebels' requirements, it is very likely that their industries in the areas actually controlled by the government forces will be completely sealed off. As long as the rebel leaders are not fools, they will not be able to take the initiative to push a large neutral force to the opposite side. And now that the top leader of the rebels is Song Pu, this situation is even more unlikely to happen. Therefore, this gave Chang Xinghai a chance to escape. There is another reason besides the fact that the rebels have no means to make this force that operates civilian spacecraft listen to their demands. Even the rebels will never and absolutely cannot take action against such a ship carrying a large number of civilians. The reason lies within the rebels themselves. The rebels themselves are not orthodox, so they must receive support from civilian forces in the face of attacks by government forces. If the rebels dare to directly destroy civilian ships, the military morale of the entire rebel army and the original support from the outside world will disappear amid a large number of civilian casualties. Losing one Chang Xinghai, in exchange for erasing the rebels' biggest advantage, might be a gain for the government forces. Good people will be criticized for doing bad things, while bad people will just treat bad things as normal. This is the biggest difference between government forces and rebels now. Popular support is the foundation of the rebels. However, the restriction brought by the people's support is an invisible restriction that the forces on the outside are weaker than the government forces, but they are superior to the government forces in terms of development potential and support from other forces behind them. The general information about the rebels and government forces had already been analyzed by Chen Xinghai's teammates during her escape, so this was the confidence for her to leave safely. When I saw my teammates discussing Chen Ming's last operation just now, Chen Xinghai suddenly had an idea and asked, "By the way, didn't Chen Ming cause sabotage at the civilian airport? Send this paragraph and question the rebels." Someone immediately replied, "That's not good. There happen to be a few ships used by spies at that airport. If you tell them, it will muddy the waters for the other side." "Okay, that's okay." Chen Xinghai didn't say much. Anyway, this kind of large-scale, overall strategic command was not something she was good at. She just had to do what she should do. At this moment, someone suddenly sent another message to the terminal in Chen Xinghai's hand. "I have bad news here. Chen Ming's ability to make the destroyer jump is not the result of his psychic powers." Chen Xinghai immediately asked, "What is that?" Chen Ming developed a technology called the Stabilized Hyperspace Channel Jump Engine. As you all know, I work part-time at the laboratory directly under the 14th Army Corps. There is a patented technology that is being tested and is said to have been obtained by Lieutenant General Bai. I was originally wondering how Lieutenant General Bai knew this stuff, so I asked, but it turned out that Chen Ming came up with the technology and asked Lieutenant General Bai to help develop it. In reality, it may take time to promote this kind of equipment, but in the simulation, the rebel fleet has lost 7 or 88, and all of them have to build new ones. As long as you give it time, all the rebel spacecraft will have the ability to jump in hyperspace, and for the cruiser, this system is independent of its own jump system. You understand that this is what you mean. The terminal communication channel suddenly fell into silence. No one expected that Chen Ming alone could make such a huge difference in the battlefield situation. After a long silence, someone finally broke the silence and said, "This failure is a bit of a pity." His reaction was already slow due to lack of experience. "It's okay. Thinking on the bright side, as long as Chen Xinghai can come back, at least we won't lose. The rebels are still at a disadvantage, and the war has just begun. We still have a chance." While Chen Xinghai encouraged each other, Chen Ming also just escaped from the hyperspace jump and came to an unmanned galaxy belonging to the government forces. He said in the terminal, "I am safe for now." "Good." Song Pu replied immediately and then sent another one. "But there is bad news." Chen Xinghai ran away. Song Pu got news of the failure of his men's pursuit of Chen Xinghai just as Chen Ming rushed into the airport. When the spaceship Chen Xinghai boarded took off, he knew that they could no longer pursue Chen Xinghai. The reason is the same as what Chen Xinghai said. It is because of the limitations of the rebels' current situation. But he didn't tell the bad news just now. After all, Chen Ming was also in an emergency situation, and telling him bad news wouldn't be helpful. It was only now that Chen Ming was safe that he revealed the news. Engineer Hong Guanghong immediately said on the communication channel, "This simulated battle that will last for a month has just begun. It is unlikely that the beginning will directly create a fatal situation. Even if you give the order immediately, as long as the person reacts quickly enough, it is normal for him to run away. There is no need to blame yourself. Since the psyker is back, just treat it as a normal start." Chen Ming suddenly realized Hong Guanghong's problem when he said this and said, "If you look at it the other way around, if the time is delayed for too long, it may make it more difficult to escape, like what I just did." His sense of smell was not very sensitive for this kind of battle, so his reaction was half a beat too slow, and he was finally blocked outside the airport. If he could have set off a few minutes earlier, he might have run away without any disturbance like Chen Xinghai did. Song Pu immediately said, "It's not your problem. It's that I was too slow to remind you. I should have read it as soon as I saw the spy's documents placed in such a conspicuous position. If I saw Chen Xinghai's information, I would have read it as soon as possible. Just remind you." Hong Guanghong suddenly interrupted at this time and said, "Okay, don't share the pot. Let's discuss the plan after the psychic comes back." Good. Song Pu agreed decisively and did not waste time on dividing the pot. However, Chen Ming interrupted at this time. "Wait a minute. I remember you said that the positions of Cheng Xinghai and I are actually opposite. We are both in a position where the hostile force is close to our own force's territory, and the distance between them isn't that far, right?" "Right. Then I have an idea." Chen Ming's thoughts are obvious when combined with what he just said. The few people who had just seen Chen Ming's jump operation in hyperspace through the spy means arranged by Song Pu also understood the situation instantly. But Song Pu did not support Chen Ming's idea. It is best not to attack civilian spaceships. Once you leave any traces on the spacecraft, we will be very passive. Chen Ming knew Song Pu's concerns and said, "The spaceship is my home ground, and I will not leave any traces." Song Pu emphasized again, "If there is a problem with the people on the spacecraft, any small problem will be fermented by the government forces and have a great impact on us. The risks are great, but the benefits are unequal. There is no way Cheng Xinghai can compare with the most basic supporters of our rebels at present, unless you are absolutely sure. Can you accurately find Cheng Xinghai on a spaceship with thousands of civilians and kill or capture her without alerting anyone or leaving any traces? There is no need for everyone to keep silent. As long as there is no substantive evidence such as videos, photos, or recordings, can you do it?" Chen Ming gave an affirmative answer. "Believe me, there are many things about my spiritual power that you don't know about." Song Pu fell into thinking again and said after a moment of silence, "The risk is still very high, but I agree." Hong Guanghong and Dong Miao responded quickly. "I agree." No comment. Cheng Xinghai also sent a sentence in the terminal after a while. 1. Everyone agrees, then I will send you the coordinates. Chen Ming's special terminal quickly received a series of digital coordinates. These were the channel coordinates of the civilian passenger ship Cheng Xinghai was traveling on. With a little calculation, Chen Ming could figure out the current location of the passenger ship. It was about a quarter of the way along the route, and it wouldn't take long for it to leave the area actually controlled by the rebels. When the ship was about to arrive at the junction of the areas actually controlled by the government forces and the rebels, it was the time for Chen Ming to take action. The hyperspace channel jump system is ready. Chen Ming activated the hyperspace jump system, and a moment later, he appeared in the target alleyway, close to the side of the rebel-occupied area. All he has to do now is wait quietly for his prey to arrive at its predetermined location. After all, Chen Ming had been a hunter for a while, so he had a lot of patience. While waiting, some spacecraft would pass through this channel from time to time, but no spacecraft could spot Chen Ming's spacecraft. On the one hand, the detection systems of those civilian ships were relatively weak. On the other hand, when Chen Ming built his own spacecraft, he used isolation scanning materials from a spacecraft he found at the airport that seemed to be involved in smuggling business. With Chen Ming also shutting down the engine and all systems that would lead to the discovery of the spacecraft, it was indeed difficult to detect it by sticking to the edge of the channel and those rolling hyperspace clouds. It was this scene that suddenly made Chen Ming feel familiar. He seems to have done this before. However, Chen Ming used to be a pirate, but now Chen Ming is Cheng Xinghai. Speaking of which, the last time Chen Ming went to fight a pirate, it seemed that he was helping his boss to fight a pirate who had intercepted his colony's supplies without a long eye. It was after that time that Chen Ming and his boss gradually became closer and began to have some relations that were not just about interests. Just as Chen Ming was thinking about some strange things while waiting, the sensor of Chen Ming's spacecraft finally found his target. The civilian passenger ship, like other passing spacecraft, did not notice Chen Ming's existence at all and was heading towards the destination at the highest speed it could reach in the channel. Chen Ming immediately set off and boarded a shuttle that could only carry one person and was also made of isolation materials. He approached the civilian passenger ship at the lowest power. After adjusting the direction and gradually accelerating to the same speed as the civilian passenger ship, Chen Ming's psychic power was activated, and several mechanical arms instantly extended from the shuttle, hanging the shuttle on the bottom of the civilian passenger ship. Chen Ming did not need the passenger ship to open the docking interface, and directly reached out and pressed on the top of his head, and a layer of waves like the surface of the water instantly appeared on the bottom shell of the passenger ship. Chen Ming jumped lightly, and the whole person easily entered the semi-liquid hull. The shuttle mounted on the bottom of the spacecraft turned into liquid metal after Chen Ming completely entered the passenger ship, drifting in the space, and was soon thrown off by the passenger ship. Chen Ming took over the entire spacecraft smoothly without affecting the function of the spacecraft itself. And through the monitoring system, he found the cabin where Cheng Xinghai, who was marked by Song Pu, was. Chen Ming needed everything to be stable without any traces that would be recorded by others, so the impact would naturally be as small as possible. So Chen Ming did not appear directly in the cabin where Cheng Xinghai was, but appeared in the bathroom separated from her cabin by a corridor. He had prepared an electromagnetic pistol in his hand that fired steel needles thinner than hair silently. This thing is best for assassination. Chen Ming suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart because he never thought that there would be such a day. In the past, others would assassinate him, but he never expected that one day it would be his turn to assassinate others. For some reason, he was even a little excited now. However, the gun in Chen Ming's hand was only the last resort. The most stable assassination method still had to rely on Chen Ming's own psychic power and the spaceship he controlled. Of course, Chen Ming was not referring to the rough method that would definitely leave traces, such as breaking the porthole of the spaceship directly. Instead, he used the tiny metal liquid he controlled, which was refined to the level of atoms that were invisible to the naked eye, to directly penetrate into Cheng Xinghai's heart or brain and directly kill her after condensation. However, Chen Ming discovered a problem at this moment before the action, and his idea seemed to be impossible to realize. Because the simulation was not yet so detailed. Although there were many details in this simulation, and all NPCs had extremely human behaviors, but it was still a bit too exaggerated to want details at the atomic level. Chen Ming could not do this at all in the simulation. Since this method failed, if Chen Ming still wanted to continue to use psychic power to assassinate Cheng Xinghai, he could only choose to use a small amount of metal liquid. But if it is a small amount, it will be a bit unstable. A small amount of metal liquid cannot directly penetrate the skin like atoms. So Chen Ming must make the metal liquid into something like a steel needle to kill people, which is almost the same as using a steel needle gun directly. Moreover, Chen Ming's psychic power can only control the metal liquid to make certain things, and make some changes to the shape and position of the metal liquid. His psychic power may not be able to control the metal liquid to accelerate to the point where it can kill Cheng Xinghai with one blow. Moreover, if Cheng Xinghai is a little more vigilant, he can always notice the changes in the surrounding environment. Once Cheng Xinghai finds a problem, any subsequent actions are likely to leave evidence in the eyes of others. Well, why not use this thing? Chen Ming turned off the safety of the electromagnetic steel needle gun, hid it in his clothes, and walked out of the bathroom in ordinary casual clothes. The corridor outside the bathroom is connected to a passenger cabin separated by a door on both sides. There is a small window on the door, and you can see the appearance of the passenger cabin. Chen Ming can stick to the door of one of the doors and see Cheng Xinghai's position through the small window. To be honest, if Songpu hadn't reminded him in advance, Chen Ming would have seen Cheng Xinghai's makeup on the surveillance camera. Chen Ming almost didn't recognize that this ordinary young woman with makeup was the lively Cheng Xinghai. After silently sighing at the awesomeness of the evil magic, Chen Ming raised his gun and aimed it at the back of Cheng Xinghai's head. But just before he pulled the trigger, Cheng Xinghai suddenly stood up. Chen Ming didn't have the confidence to hit the target stably, so he immediately put away his gun, and his heartbeat unconsciously accelerated slightly. But he calmed down immediately. Cheng Xinghai couldn't possibly find him. All the authority of the entire spacecraft had fallen into his hands, and all the communications on the spacecraft were monitored by Chen Ming at all times. Except for a special terminal that Cheng Xinghai should also have, everything on the entire spacecraft could not escape Chen Ming's eyes. Cheng Xinghai suddenly made a move now, probably just because he had something to do. Just when Chen Ming was thinking this, Cheng Xinghai suddenly turned around and walked towards the corridor where Chen Ming was now, holding a cosmetic box in his hand, as if he wanted to go to the bathroom to touch up his makeup. This was simply God's help, which could completely minimize the impact of his future actions. Chen Ming also retreated and came to a small corner on the other side of the corridor for people to smoke. He lit a cigarette that he had picked up when he was controlling someone else's spaceship on the planet before, and prepared to pretend that he was just a smoker. However, something unexpected happened to Chen Ming again. He had never smoked before, and he originally thought that smoking in the simulation would not be a problem. But when he took the first puff into his lungs, the thick smoke and the burning feeling in his lungs instantly made Chen Ming cough violently. When Chang Xinghai appeared in the corridor, she immediately noticed the person who was coughing violently in the corner in front of her. But she just frowned, did not notice the appearance of the person with his back to her, and continued to walk into the bathroom. Chang Xinghai stood in front of the mirror and took out the terminal. She quickly broke an ID card that had been ejected from the terminal and quickly inserted another card into the terminal in her hand. Then she removed her makeup, untied the headband on her head, revealed her original appearance, and immediately put on a mask. At the same time, she gently pulled her shoulders and took off her heavy coat, leaving a lighter and more convenient sportswear. Chang Xinghai's movements were very fast, and the total time of these movements was only a dozen seconds. After confirming that there was no problem, Chang Xinghai casually threw the clothes on the sink in a compartment, turned around and prepared to leave the bathroom and walk to another passenger cabin. It seemed that she wanted to change to a new identity directly on the spacecraft to avoid being tracked when she landed. However, just as she turned around and left the mirror, she suddenly noticed that the light from the passenger cabin behind her suddenly dimmed a little. Chang Xinghai turned her head back instantly and found that the small window on the door behind her that she had just passed by had been covered with a layer of gauze-like texture, making it impossible to see the situation on the other side. And the isolation door itself seemed to be thickened a lot, and the wall seemed to have become a little bloated. The same change happened to the door in front of Chang Xinghai that Chang Xinghai was about to pass. At this time, there was only one person in the corridor besides her. Chang Xinghai looked at the coughing person in the corner with vigilance. His body was tense and could explode at any time. This was indeed what Chen Ming did. He cut off the connection between this room and other rooms and temporarily turned the corridor into a closed place. The sound would not be transmitted, and people outside could not open the door. If it was only broken for a few minutes, it would not have any major impact. While coughing, Chen Ming raised the electromagnetic steel needle gun, pointed it at Chang Xinghai and said, "Cough, cough, cough, you, cough." Okay. At this moment, Chang Xinghai immediately thought of the situation in which Chen Ming's spaceship jumped directly in hyperspace after seeing Chen Ming's appearance clearly, and instantly figured out how Chen Ming got here. Chang Xinghai raised his hands, slowly pressed against the wall of the corridor on one side, and said, "You have never smoked?" "No," cough. Chen Ming coughed and turned the muzzle of the gun. After a long time, he finally got rid of the pain in his lungs from smoking. "Are you surrendering or?" Before Chen Ming finished speaking, Chang Xinghai finally walked to the wall at this moment. Her slender legs kicked against the wall, and she instantly burst out in the corridor at a terrifying speed for Chen Ming's physical fitness. Chen Ming didn't even have time to control the metal liquid flowing out of the hull to restrict Chang Xinghai. Chang Xinghai had already dodged and pounced in front of Chen Ming in the narrow corridor. Fuck. Is Chang Xinghai still a human being with this physical fitness? Chen Ming retreated while pulling the trigger continuously, but Chang Xinghai could often react in the instant before Chen Ming fired. Often, before Chen Ming's fingers were completely closed, his body would lean slightly, easily dodging several rapidly flying steel needles and rushing in front of Chen Ming, slapping the gun out of his hand. At the same time, a punch with a sound of breaking through the air hit Chen Ming's face. Chen Ming's thinking speed was indeed able to see Chang Xinghai's movements clearly, but his body could not react. The spiritual energy that enhanced physical fitness was obtained from the Queen of Insects. Although the prosthesis could have it, it would definitely not have it in the simulation. This seemingly petite fist could definitely give him a concussion with one punch. However, Chen Ming's prosthesis was at least the same physical fitness as Chen Ming. Chen Ming himself carried tools weighing more than 10 kilograms every day, and had been exercising all the time. Although it was definitely not as fierce as the training methods in the army, Chen Ming's physical fitness was definitely better than that of most ordinary people. It was not to the point that he could not even withstand a face-to-face encounter. So Chen Ming could still do the most appropriate and fastest action he could do at this moment. That was to squat on the ground with his head in his arms without saying a word and roll backwards. Although Chen Xinghai does not look tall and has no obvious muscles, his physical fitness is a level higher than Chen Ming's. He will definitely not be able to win in a head-on fight, so he has to use other means. Chen Ming retreated to avoid, but Chen Xinghai continued to step forward and twisted his body flexibly. The body that had just exploded with terrifying speed drove the seemingly slender but fiercely impacting whip kick to the neck of Chen Ming, who was half squatting on the ground. Chen Ming's current action was just right for Chen Xinghai's height to exert force. If this kick was real, Chen Ming might even be kicked to death, and it would be considered lucky if he was knocked unconscious. Chen Ming stood there without any movement, and it seemed that he did not react, and seemed to have given up struggling. But in the next moment, in the corridor, there was a sound of flesh and metal colliding. Chen Xinghai's kick hit Chen Ming's neck, who was condensed with power armor all over his body. Chen Ming's head tilted slightly under the impact, and at this moment he seemed to hear a crisp sound of broken bones. Chen Xinghai immediately fell to the ground with a bitter look on her face, but she still struggled to crawl towards the pistol that she had just knocked away. However, liquid metal immediately flowed out from the ground of the ship, and the pistol that fell on the ground was directly lifted up and sent to Chen Ming's hand. Along with some liquid metal that appeared out of thin air, a new electromagnetic javelin was gradually constructed. Chen Xinghai saw that the situation was not right, and there was no possibility of a comeback. He slowly raised his body to block the small movement of his hand towards the cosmetic box. She pulled out a steel needle from the position of the box's rotating shaft and pretended to stab herself. However, the surveillance in the corridor has always been in Chen Ming's field of vision, and Chen Xinghai's movements are invisible in his eyes. The liquid metal immediately grabbed Chen Xinghai's arm and cast into a piece of pure iron, handcuffing her like handcuffs. Chen Ming saw Chen Xinghai's burst of speed just now and didn't have time to react. Now that he has reacted, it will be easy to solve. He was wearing a power armor and faced Chen Xinghai, who was almost unarmed and even had a broken leg, almost face to face. If Chen Ming still couldn't beat him, he really had to jump into space without wearing a protective suit. Up to this point, Chen Xinghai had completely lost the ability to resist, but the next step was a bit difficult. However, Bai Quan's voice appeared in the ears of Chen Ming and Chen Xinghai at this moment, reminding them, "In the simulation, there is no need to search the opposite sex enemy. Let her take out the special terminal on her body by herself. There is nothing else except this. This is easy to deal with." After Chen Xinghai reluctantly handed her special terminal to Chen Ming, a large amount of metal liquid instantly flowed out from the ground of the spacecraft and wrapped Chen Xinghai and put a protective suit on her. Chen Ming bent down and grabbed the belt of Chen Xinghai's protective suit to pick her up and put her on his shoulder. He took her directly through the hull of the spacecraft next to him and entered the space. The thickened doors on both sides of the corridor were restored to their original state after Chen Ming left, and the walls pierced by the steel needles also excluded the steel needles, leaving no trace. This section of the corridor surveillance video was forged by Chen Ming using technical means, and all records were deleted. Even the clothes that Chen Xinghai had just hung on the sink in the women's restroom were fished out by Chen Ming using his psychic power. Except that Chen Xinghai did disappear on the spaceship, there was no evidence of Chen Ming's presence on the entire spaceship. And the disappearance of people is too common. The disappearance of one person can't make any waves in the scale of the entire star field, even Chen Xinghai. Even if the government army wants to use this as an excuse for propaganda, it's useless. The disappearance of Chen Xinghai, a civilian, can only be exchanged for a sentence that this matter is unremarkable. Chen Xinghai, a spy, was captured by the rebels. Isn't that reasonable? The government army can only choose to swallow this loss now.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.